if they're mild. Our next topic, projectile eye injuries. Now, I thought about talking about handguns and rifles, but it's pretty obvious that a handgun or a rifle is going to destroy the eye. So instead, I figured I would focus on the three types of guns that we see most often in the clinic, and that's stuff that children have. And it's usually either a BB gun injury, airsoft injury, or a paintball gun. And let's see what kind of damage they can do. So let's begin with the BB gun. This is the classic Red Ryder BB gun produced by Daisy. It's been out forever. It's in many popular Christmas movies. This gun shoots a small pellet at 350 feet per second, which is relatively fast. Here I am cocking it. A single cock is all it takes, and the BB comes out the end, styrofoam head, to give you an idea of how this works. Now, the danger with BB guns are that the pellet itself is made out of steel. It's a non-compressible steel covered by another alloy metal on top of it. But because it's steel, it doesn't really deform. So when it hits something, it doesn't crush. It immediately bounces off. So you see a lot of ricochet injuries, and that's the danger of the BB gun. That's a little bit different than a pellet gun. A pellet or an air gun is something that you can pump up very high. And they shoot at like 1,000 feet per second, which is incredibly quick. They use pellets instead of BBs, which is usually a soft metal like lead that compresses, has a flange and more aerodynamic shape. That flange expands as it goes down the barrel, engages the rifling of the barrel, so it spins on the way out, much more accurate. And here's the classic Diablo shape, and you can see that it crushes. This crushing is good because it doesn't ricochet as much. The downside, of course, is just the sheer speed at which these pellets come out. So to put things in perspective, a handgun shoots at about 1,000 feet per second as well. So this is about the same as a handgun. A rifle, though, something a hunter would use, is about 3,000 feet per second. So it's not quite as bad as that, but that's an air gun. Our next contender is a paintball. Paintball was invented in the early 70s as a way for the logging industry and forestry to mark trees that were hard to get to. And so here I am marking a couple of trees. This is the modern air paintball gun. It has several parts. Usually a compressed cylinder of CO2 air that pumps air into the barrel itself. On top, that round thing is it's a hopper, and that's where the paintballs go in. You load them through the top, they drop down into the barrel, and then the compressed air blows it out the end. Face mask is crucial with this instrument, and also something for the mouth so you don't break teeth if this thing hits you. That's a plug that you use during tournament play so people know that it's on safety. And let's shoot this head, and we'll see what kind of effect we get in paintball. You've got to cover the mouth, otherwise you'll break teeth with this thing, and that's why that mask looks that way. But that's the paintball gun. Of course, if it hits the eye, some significant trauma, right? The paintball itself is relatively heavy, especially compared to a BB, and it's filled with a non-toxic paint that doesn't seem to really cause much problem. Okay. Interesting. The thing with the paintball is that this is the first gun that's meant to be shot at people, right? And interesting, this young man appears to be relatively resistant to paintball injuries. Maybe it's the hair, I don't know. But so that's a big difference. This is meant to be shot at people. Airsoft is our final contender. Airsoft was also invented in the 70s, Hong Kong, China, because of a ban on firearm ownage. They come in different styles, a CO2-powered handgun, for example, which is kind of nice because you can kind of hold it gangster style, which is, anyway, it's useful. Anyway, there's also the spring-loaded guns, which are pretty accurate. But the most impressive type of airsoft is probably the electric one that can pump out a lot of pellets at a very rapid rate, as you can see here. Just quite incredible. No. All right, where was I going with this? I don't know. Okay, back to this. Oh, there we go. That's what. Let's see if this young man's not quite as resistant to the airsoft gun, as you can tell. But we love him. And now, we have three different guns. But how do we judge how dangerous these guns are relative to each other as far as the eye? And one method we could do is we could calculate the kinetic energy. How much energy is traveling in that projectile when it hits the eye, and how much is transmitted to the eye? And we can calculate this relatively easy. It's a simple equation. Energy equals the mass, how heavy that little pellet is, times the velocity, how fast it's going, squared. Instead of looking at equations, let's just measure these things. So if you take 100 BBs and you measure them on a gram scale, 100 comes out to 34 grams, so each BB weighs 0.34 grams. 10 paintballs comes out to, 30 grams, so each paintball is 3 grams. That's like 10 times heavier than a BB. Okay. Airsoft come in different weights. 0.12 is what most starters use, but the most popular weight is 0.2 grams. So actually about half the weight of a steel BB is what these little plastic things are. And if we plug these into our equation, we see a couple of things. The first one is that a BB gun gives about 2 joules. An airsoft is about half that. So that kind of makes sense. Airsoft has always been touted as being much safer than a BB gun, and it probably is. The paintball gun, though, a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. 15 joules is 10 times higher for the most part than those other weapons. And finally, the pellet gun, just because it goes so fast, it has a lot of energy as well. But let's not look at the equation. Let's actually do an experiment. This is called a ballistic pendulum. It's a block of nylon. You shoot from the side, and it pushes this little scale, and using that, you can kind of calculate how much kinetic energy is given. So we'll start by shooting it with a BB gun, and we'll see how far this thing moves. Shoot at the end, and that's what, about 12.5 degrees, something like that? Okay. Let's repeat that. We'll use our airsoft. Let's set it to single shot, and we'll see what type of energy is given. Okay, about 6.5 or 6, so about half. That's pretty consistent with our equation from before. But let's finally end with our paintball, and we'll see what that does. It blows it off. It doesn't even work. The ballistic pendulum's not even made to measure something that high, and it looks like we knocked our scale off. And so that paintball really does